What's up guys, welcome back to Tank Control Games. This is episode 5 of my Resident Evil camera series in Unreal Engine, and today's going to be all about bug fixing. So in the last 4 episodes we set up our system and it's working pretty well, but there is still some frustrating bugs, and I mentioned a few of them in the comments of the previous videos, so we're going to be going through those today and fixing them together. So we're going to be doing some quality of life improvements to the system, just to make it more user friendly. So if that sounds interesting to you, stick around, and if you haven't caught the last 4 videos, make sure you watch them before proceeding here. So let's open up our project and get started. So I think the easiest one that we'll do first is we're just going to move some of our settings on the master camera to be instance editable so we can actually access them from the editor. So if we go into our master camera, we have already a camera settings category for is on rail camera, is tracking camera, and is level start camera. So that's pretty good. The next thing that I think we're going to do is we'll probably want settings for on-rail and settings for tracking. So let's make a new category, new categories for that. So let's do on-rail settings. And we add our look-ahead distance, which will make instance editable. And let's do follow interp speed. And distance follow speed. And follow offset distance. So those are all settings that you may want to tweak to kind of change the feel and the speed of how far or how fast the camera follows along that spline. So just set all of those to instance editable, which is just setting, clicking that little eye icon next to each variable. And that should be good for those. Let's compile. Then we want to do the same for our tracking variables, which really I think is just the rotation interp speed. So let's just set that one to be tracking camera, or just tracking settings is fine. So we have our on-rail settings, our tracking settings, and our kind of default camera settings. That should be good. Compile, and actually also make sure your tracking is instance editable as well. Then compile and save. And then if we back out to our scene and you click on the camera, now we'll have a tab basically for each of those settings, and you can tweak those and manipulate those as you need. So small improvement, but we'll still just make things easier as you're setting stuff on the camera. Then the next thing I think we want to do is a bug fix under our third-person character. So let's search that. And yeah, it's going to be right here under our handle modern controls function that we set up in, I think, episode 3. There's a small mistake. In my personal project I set up before we did the live demo, I did it correctly, but here used the wrong cosine. So this is stick angle tolerance degrees, and we actually want to use the cosine degrees and not cosine radians. So if you drag off of degrees and search cosine, then you'll see cos degrees. And this is the one we actually want. One with the D at the end. And actually, just to show you what's going on if you don't use that, if you use the radians version, when you cross through, you'll feel it's very sticky to actually break out of the tolerance. Like I had to press alternate keys like the A and D key when I just walked through that trigger multiple times to actually get them to not keep walking forward. It basically causes a pretty bad bug where it's not smooth anymore. So all we want to do is use the cosine degrees version. And if you compile, save, and click play again and do it, super easy to break out of the locked direction that we set. And it just makes it feel really natural and intuitive. Much better than it was before. And then the next thing I think we'll do, maybe the easier of the next upcoming fixes. So another thing I wanted to support with this system is also being able to do cinematic cameras. So right now we just have the regular Unreal camera, but it's pretty easy actually to support cinematic cameras as well. So to do that, let's create another enum. So we're going to search enum, and we're going to do E camera types. This new enum, let's just add two enumerators, and we're going to name them camera, or regular camera, and cinematic camera, or CineCam. And then just save that. And then in the master camera, on begin play, we're gonna add it so that we can utilize these. So let's drag that up. Let's create a new variable and make it our enum. So look up camera type. Camera types. And then let's make this also instance editable and add it to our camera settings category. Because we're also going to be able to want to set this per camera. So if we do that, then what we can do is a sequence node. And then first we'll do all of these settings on the camera, and then what we can do is get our camera types and do switch. So we'll switch on camera types, and if it's a regular camera or a Cine camera, then we will, let's make this a function actually. So select those nodes, do collapse to function, and let's just name this switch camera. Okay, so in this function, what we're gonna do is we're gonna add another component actually to the actor. So let's get a Cine camera, and then make sure it's under spring arm, just like the normal camera. And in your viewport, they should be kind of overlaid on top of each other like that. And now what we're gonna do is, like the simplest way to do this is basically just destroying whatever component you don't need based on this enum. So what you can do is drag your camera and do destroy component. So when it is a Cine camera, we destroy it. And then when it is a regular camera, we destroy the Cine camera. And this is not like the most ideal way to do this. And in fact, like if you have a lot of camera actors in the scene, eventually this could become a problem on begin play if you're constantly destroying a component right when the game starts. So performance-wise, not the most ideal. For our purposes and to not have to redo a ton of things, we're going to do this for now. And if you want to do the more performant alternate way, I'll explain it now. But basically what you can do instead of doing this is removing cameras completely from the master camera base actor. So this is your master blueprint for all cameras, and you would just basically get rid of both camera types and only keep the rail pivot and spring arm, and then make two children, one that's a cinematic camera and one that's a regular camera. And then because we can just use the rail pivot to set all of the different movement functions that we're doing in this blueprint, we don't actually need the cameras in here. And that's the best way to do this, I would say. It's not the way I'm going to set up now, but it just takes a little too much time. But if you want to do it that way, that's a totally valid way and definitely more performant than this. But this should work fine for us for now. So what we can do is right-click on the camera component and do find references by name. And then we want to find all the spots where we're getting the camera. And instead of actually using the camera itself, let's use the rail pivot. And we'll find each spot where we're doing that. So we don't want to use camera, we want to use rail pivot instead, which we should have did probably from the start. It would have been simpler, we wouldn't have to change this now, but each spot where we're using that, just keep switching it to rail pivot. And that might be it. I feel like we use it in one other spot too. So we use it when we're rotating the camera normally, and then I think we use it in snapped character view too. Yeah, we do. So make that also rail pivot, and then it wants to disconnect that. I think you can just rehook it up like that. Okay, so now we should be just rotating the rail pivot, which still will rotate our camera because it's a child of it. So that should be good. And then if we go back to our graph, so when we switch between the camera types, we destroy the other component for the opposite of whatever our camera type is. And then this will force our system to use the correct camera when it's setting the view target. So, okay, so now back in our scene, let's select our camera that was our previous level start camera. And it's such a regular camera right now, so if you click play, it'll still look the same. But if we set that to cinematic camera now, and click play. Now you have this nice Cine camera, which has a lot more settings than the regular camera. It's really cool to actually use these during runtime. It looks really nice, and you can like blur out the background and do some fancier stuff with these cameras. And then if we switch, yeah, it should switch to the regular camera. We go back to the cinematic camera, so that's all working. Oh, and we are getting an error. So runtime error, attempted to access camera property, but camera not valid. Oh, okay. I think we're still using our camera in one other spot, so let's see where this is. Ah, okay, yeah. So under our third-person character, we are still getting our old camera, and we're doing a locked world location off of it. So we actually don't want to do it off the camera anymore. We want to do it just like those other variables off of the rail pivot. So do get rail pivot, and then hook that up instead. Delete the camera, compile, and let's see if that was our only issue. So now it should be working. And then let's exit. Yep, no errors. Cool, so that looks good. Okay, so with our switch camera function set up, the next fix we're going to do is also in the master camera, and it's something I mentioned in the comments of one of the previous videos, but under our tick logic, we had not hooked up the false path of the isOnRail camera branch to our branch that checks if we are tracking camera. So when you don't have that, basically if you are not an on-rail camera, nothing will happen. It'll just, that code path dies there, and you never get to this point where you run the tracking behavior. So I mentioned it as a fix in the comments, and someone mentioned it on Discord as well, but this is an easy fix for this is to just drag the false path into the tracking camera branch, and that'll work. But instead of doing that, we're going to clean this up, because this is actually kind of bad code behavior. You really don't want like a ton of kind of spaghetti logic leading into multiple different paths, and really you don't want to do checks this way. It's way more prone to error like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to collapse all of this into a function instead. So we want everything except for this logic. This logic can stay outside the function because we want to do this before we do either of these checks. So let's grab all of these nodes, everything except the tracking logic, and then right click collapse to function. Oh, and I missed that bit. So make sure you have everything collapse to function just like that, and let's name that function, rename update on rail camera, and that should be good. So if we go in that function, we're still running our isOnRail camera check before we actually trigger anything there, so that's good. And then we want to do the same for this, so unhook up that branch, collapse all of these nodes into a function, and let's name that function update tracking camera. Cool, and then let's drag both of those functions over here, and then, so we still want to do these checks pretty much exactly as that, and off this true path we'll just add a sequence node, and we'll make sure we're doing both of these functions. So that should fix the issue, and it is also just way cleaner. So if we click play, switching to our Cine camera, and then we cross over. Yep, everything's working. And then just to double check that the error is gone. Or no, it definitely is gone, because our start camera is a tracking camera, but it's not an on-rail camera. So everything's fixed. That looks good. Now, the next thing we want to do is another issue that was kind of caught in the Discord. If we take one of our on-rail cameras and we drag it backwards, and you just give yourself a lot of runway, so this is a pretty big distance, you'll see something when this camera becomes active. So we're starting with our Cine camera, and you know what, it's actually going to be easier just to see everything if we just make this a regular camera real quick. So if we cross over, yeah, you saw that there's like a huge speed up, and basically the you will only see it the first time too, so it doesn't happen every other time. And the reason that's happening is because our camera is trying to catch up to the offset distance that we're setting on the camera. So wherever that is, if it's like -200, somewhere over here. So it has to speed up to catch up to the player. And we are interpolating between that, so that's kind of why you're getting that motion. So it has to get to where it needs to go really fast. And instead of doing that, we want to do a similar concept to what we do for the tracking camera, which is when it's a tracking camera, the first frame we snap to the player's location, or snap the rotation to face the player. And we want to do the same thing over one frame. We want to snap the camera location to just be the offset location. So to do that, we actually already have basically what we need in this function that we just created for the update on-rail camera. If we go inside that function, we can use most of what's here. We don't want any of the like kind of extra logic for speed or our like interp, our smooth interp. So what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this. So duplicate update on-rail camera and name it snap to offset loc. So snap to offset location, and then let's delete everything here except for our target distance and plug that straight into the current rail distance. And then let's also just get rid of our v-interp and just set the new location instantly. So that should be all we need. That should just instantly get us where we need to. And then to actually utilize this, we're going to shift some stuff around because right now if we go to our camera trigger and then we go to where we're actually switching to enter and exit cameras in the trigger, you'll see at the end we're doing our snap to character view after setting active camera. And instead of doing that, we're going to move everything into the SetActiveCamera function, and this will just be way cleaner. So basically we were doing snap to character view right after, which also moving it into the active camera is going to have an added benefit of checking if you are the current active camera before running any of that logic. And if you do that, that'll also fix a potential issue where if your start camera is the same camera as your enter or exit camera, you won't have this weird pop potentially where you're going from this camera to this camera again instantly and snapping that character view. So this will also prevent any issues with that. So keeping everything in the SetActiveCamera function is just way cleaner. So what we'll do is delete all this logic. We only want our SetActiveCamera. And then inside that function, what we can do is at the tail end of this function, let's add a sequence node. And we still want to snap to the character view. So let's get our current active camera and do snap to character view. Just like that. And we want to do this after we snap the spline location. So let's also do that. So get active camera and do snap to offset location. And this order is actually kind of important, and I'll explain it in a second, but first let's just see if this is working. So we set that up like that to compile, and then if we click play, we do that test again where we have our spline camera pretty far back. Yep, there you go. Now it's working. It just snaps right to where it's got to go, and you don't have that issue anymore, and everything is still working correctly. So the reason we actually want to do that order, though, that I was talking about, if you were to reverse this, so let's say you did snap to character view first and then snap to offset view second, it'll still work, but you're going to get like a weird potential like interpt rotation. Yeah, like I don't know if you saw it there. It's kind of hard to see. It might be easier. Well, it'll probably just depend where I'm entering, but try to go at the edge there. Yeah, you saw it there. So it basically, like, you're still getting like a rotation lag that you would think your snapped character view would be fixing, but basically, like, if you're snapping the camera location first and you get the camera over here, or if you're snapping to character first, basically it's going to look at the player first, then it's going to move your camera here. But now that it moved here, you're not rotating to look at the player anymore, potentially. And then the camera might have to do a little interpt rotation to get to where it actually needs to point to. So it's better to actually snap the location first and then the rotation. And that's kind of why we're doing it in that order. So we'll undo that. The added benefit of doing this too is now we can actually do 2 spline cameras without any issues. So if we say this is our first spline camera, let's say this is actually the exit camera, and then we'll duplicate this and just say we want to do, you know, kind of 2 spline cameras back to back on the same trigger. And then let's set our enter camera to be this new camera and click play. And actually, let's make this not the start camera and make this one the start camera. So we click play, we have our first spline camera, that's working. And then now if we cross over, it snaps to that location and goes to our second one. And it's just way cleaner setup and easier actually to have that functionality. So another fix we want to do is something someone suggested in the comments, which is basically if you're already inside of a trigger when the level begins, you won't switch to the camera that you're overlapping with. So as a test, I put our player start right in this trigger, and since it's on the enter path, you'd want it to probably use this camera, which is our enter camera. So if we click play, it's still using our level start camera, which is this one. And that may be your desired behavior, and if it is, don't add this fix, or you can add it with like a boolean that you can switch on and off. But if you do want to see, like your level loads and you're within a camera trigger and want it to switch, then you'll want to set this up. So what we can do is off of begin play, we can do a sequence node, and we can trigger our camera ref logic, and then what we can do is get our aux collision and do is overlapping actor. And we can check if it's overlapping the player character. And we can do a print string and check if it's overlapping. So as a test, we'll try this, but this is not going to work, and I'll show you why in a second. So if you click play, you'll see 2 falses in the corner. That's because we have 2 camera triggers in the scene, and this runs on begin play on both of them, but both are false. And even though this is actually overlapping, there's something tricky with begin plays where sometimes there's a delay in initializing certain actors. So you may, off of a begin play, not actually be able to detect the player character, or something's not getting initialized at the right time. So what you can do is just delay until next tick. And then you can run that again. And there you go, now 1 is true, so this trigger is the true one. So that's working. And then what we can do from here is do a branch. And when this is true, we want to run some of the logic we have down here. So previously we were creating a timer to kind of act as a custom tick, and then we were running all of this logic. So we still want to do that, but we can probably skip a good chunk of this and just go straight into making the timer. So copy these nodes over here, and then let's create a custom event called on overlapping layer. And we'll trigger this code to start the timer. And then instead of checking if the side has changed or not, we'll just go straight into setting the previous side. So you can just drag off from there and go straight to setting previous side like that. And then that should be everything we need. So let's test if that's working. So when we click play, we should expect to use this camera. And we're still not, so let's double check why. Oh, because we didn't call our function. So or our custom event. So we just made this and we didn't hook it up. So look up on overlapping player, and then call the function, which will take you down to there and just run that path. And then compile, and let's click play again. There we go. Now we're using the right camera right off the bat. So that's working pretty good. Let's test. Okay, so another fix we want to do is something someone suggested in the comments, which is basically if you're already inside of a trigger when the level begins, you won't switch to the camera that you're overlapping with. So as a test, I put our player start right in this trigger, and since it's on the enter path, you'd want it to probably use this camera, which is our enter camera. So if we click play, it's still using our level start camera, which is this one. And that may be your desired behavior, and if it is, don't add this fix, or you can add it with like a boolean that you can switch on and off. But if you do want to see, like your level loads and you're within a camera trigger and want it to switch, then you'll want to set this up. So what we can do is, off of begin play, we can do a sequence node, and we can trigger our camera ref logic, and then what we can do is get our box collision and do is overlapping actor. And we can check if it's overlapping the player character. And we can do a print string and check if it's overlapping. So as a test, we'll try this, but this is not going to work, and I'll show you why in a second. So if you click play, you'll see 2 falses in the corner. That's because we have 2 camera triggers in the scene, and this runs on begin play on both of them, but both are false. And even though this is actually overlapping, there's something tricky with begin plays where sometimes there's a delay in initializing certain actors. So you may, off of a begin play, not actually be able to detect the player character, or something's not getting initialized at the right time. So what you can do is just delay until next tick. And then you can run that again. And there you go, now 1 is true, so this trigger is the true one. So that's working. And then what we can do from here is do a branch. And when this is true, we want to run some of the logic we have down here. So previously we were creating a timer to kind of act as a custom tick, and then we were running all of this logic. So we still want to do that, but we can probably skip a good chunk of this and just go straight into making the timer. So copy these nodes over here, and then let's create a custom event called on overlapping layer. And we'll trigger this code to start the timer, and then instead of checking if the side has changed or not, we'll just go straight into setting the previous side. So you can just drag off from there and go straight to setting previous side, like that. And then that should be everything we need. So let's test if that's working. So when we click play, we should expect to use this camera. And we're still not, so let's double check why. Oh, because we didn't call our function. So or our custom event. So we just made this and we didn't hook it up. So look up on overlapping player, and then call the function, which will take you down to there, and just run that path. And then compile, and let's click play again. There we go. Now we're using the right camera right off the bat. So that's working pretty good. Okay, so the last fix we're going to do is add some error handling for if we don't have an enter or exit camera set on our camera trigger. So right now, if you were to take, let's say, your exit camera and just clear your selection for it, and then you try to walk through that path, it's going to bug out and you're going to get a bunch of errors. So what we're going to do is handle that scenario so we don't run into that ever. We're going to do a check before switching to our enter or exit cameras, and we're just going to make sure that they are valid. So super easy. We're just going to add isValid nodes to the enter or exit camera, and when it is valid, then you proceed and you switch and set active camera. But when they're not, you do nothing. So it's just a safety check. And actually, one other way we can improve that, instead of just doing nothing, let's also print a string, print a debug message when it is not valid too, so we know we need to fix something, and then when we're setting stuff up, it'll be very clear that we have to set either our enter or exit camera. So also add a print string, and just write error no enter camera set. And then make that red just so we know it's an error. And hook that up to is not valid. And then we want to do the same thing on the exit camera, but just switch it so it says no exit camera found. Cool, so compile, and then let's do our test again. So cross through no exit camera set, and also didn't try to switch the camera at all, so we don't get any that weird switching where it kind of jumps inside the player. And then just as another test, we'll just clear that enter. And then since we didn't have a enter set, and even though we are still doing our code that would have switched that camera since we're overlapping it, you'll just note that nothing happens, and we just get our error message. Cool, so that's looking good. So there's still a bunch of other improvements we might be able to do to this system. I'm thinking potentially having like some type of color coordination between the triggers and the cameras so that you can tell which group of cameras belongs to which, or maybe at least color coding them green and red so you know it's an enter and exit camera. And we may do that in a future video, but there's some other fun stuff we're going to add to the system first. So did you enjoy the video? If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. It'll help my channel grow. If you have any suggestions to improve this system or anything else you want to see added to it, just let me know in the comments down below. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.